Hello.
Man, I think me and you need some space, man.
Space? What you mean, like space or space?
Space as in separate.
Okay, well, you can go in the living room and I go in the other room. What you talking about?
I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about seeing other people. Like, meet other people.
Okay, then you want to meet other people?
Yup.
You want to meet other people?
Yup.
Okay, I tell you what then. You can meet God, and I'm going to go meet the judge. Them the only doggone people you going to meet. Stop here with me. You with me until you die, okay?
March 4th, 2023. A morning that should have been filled with excitement and anticipation. In the peaceful neighborhood of Colerain Township, Ohio, the sound of birds chirping and the soft rustling of leaves was broken by a tragedy no one saw coming. Inside a modest apartment, India Kinamore, a 26-year-old mother, was preparing for the birth of her second child. She was days away from welcoming her baby boy, whom she had already named Kieran. The anticipation was high. India's social media posts, filled with joy, painted the picture of a woman ready for motherhood once again. But what should have been a celebration of life quickly turned into a night of unimaginable loss. India had a 6-year-old son she adored, and a future ahead of her full of hope. But behind the smiles and the excitement for the baby to come, there was something dark brewing in the shadows. The father of her unborn child, her boyfriend Kayvon Warren, was hiding a deep secret. He didn't want another child. And instead of talking to India, instead of facing his responsibilities, he made a choice that would shatter everything she had worked for, everything they had built together. Kayvon Warren, the man who should have been standing by her side, was secretly plotting the unthinkable. What led him to make this choice? Was it simply the burden of fatherhood? Or was there something more insidious at play? In a calculated move, he decided that he couldn't face fatherhood, and in his desperation he turned to violence. As India prepared for the arrival of her son, Kayvon's mind was already set on something far more sinister, a plan to end it all. On the morning of March 4th, just hours before India was scheduled to give birth, tragedy struck. While she lay unaware of the danger closing in, Kayvon had already set the wheels of destruction in motion. He left the door unlocked for his accomplices, setting the stage for a cold-blooded murder that would take the life of the woman he once loved and the child she carried. In the end, India's life was taken that morning. And what was the reaction from the man who should have mourned her? Kayvon did the unthinkable. He pretended to grieve. He posted messages on social media, pretending to be the devastated boyfriend, the grieving father. But was his sorrow genuine? Or was it part of his calculated plan to cover his tracks and manipulate those around him? This is where the story takes an even darker turn. Kayvon's grief was nothing more than a performance. He faked his sorrow, manipulating everyone around him, pretending to be the broken man who had lost the love of his life. But the truth would soon come out, and when it did, it would reveal the depth of his betrayal. What kind of person does this? How can someone go from being a loving partner to orchestrating the murder of the person they supposedly loved? And how does someone so close to you, someone who you trust, become the one to end your life? Stay tuned, because this case is far from over. We will dive deeper into the investigation, the chilling twists, and the shocking betrayal that shook an entire community. But first, ask yourself, how much do we really know about the people closest to us? And how far can a secret go before it destroys everything? If you're new to City Crime Tales, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next part of this chilling case. Trust us, you won't want to miss what happens next. And as always, remember, the truth is often more twisted than the crime itself. India
Hello.
Kinamore was born on
Man, I
August
think me and
15,
you need some space,
1996,
Space.
in the
What you
bustling
mean, like
city of
space or
Cincinnati,
space,
Ohio.
space?
Space as
From the
in
very
separate.
beginning, she
Okay,
was
well, you can
surrounded
go in the
by
living
love.
room and I go in the other
Her
room.
family,
What you
her
talking
friends,
about?
her
I ain't
community,
talking about them. I'm talking about
each
seeing other
playing a
people.
role in
Like,
shaping
meet
the
other people.
vibrant woman she
Okay,
would
then
become.
you want to meet other
India
people?
was the kind
Yup.
of
You wanna
person
meet other
whose
people?
energy filled
Yup.
the room.
Okay, I tell you what
Her
then.
laughter was
You can meet
contagious,
God,
her smile
and I'ma go meet
infectious,
the judge.
and she made
Not
sure
only
that
doggone
everyone
people,
around her
you
felt
gonna meet
cared
something
for.
here with me.
Her
You with
childhood
me
was full
until
of
you
warmth
die,
and
okay?
joy, a
Hey guys,
reflection of
let's
the
do a
love that
pregnancy bump
surrounded her.
update. So I
As a
am now,
child,
get this
India
fucking
was
baby out
known
of me,
for her
weeks
sweet
along.
nature and her
The baby
ability
is the
to
size
light
of a
up any
fucking
room.
whale and what sounds
Whether
like
it
at
was her
least 5
dancing or her
painful
playful
stitches.
spirit, she had
My
a way
main
of making
symptom.
You're
those
about to
around
learn
her
about
feel
Kayvon
special.
Warren and his
But
accomplices
what
will
stood
change
out
how you
most
think
was
about
her
the people
heart.
closest to you.
India was a loving soul,
Before we begin,
always looking
I
out
need you
for
to
others.
consider this question.
She
What
loved her
kind of
family
desperation or
deeply and
evil drives
cherished
someone
every
to kill the
moment
mother of
spent
their
with them,
unborn child?
especially
Share
her
your
mother,
initial
who was
thoughts
her
in the
guiding
comments below.
force.
But I promise
As
you,
India
by
grew
the end of
older,
this story,
her love for
your
life
understanding
only
of human
deepened.
betrayal will be
She
forever
matured
changed.
into a young woman with
Because what
dreams of her
Kayvon Warren
own,
did to India
goals she
Kinamore
hoped
goes
to
beyond
achieve,
anything you
and
might
a future
expect,
she could
even
be
in your
proud
darkest
of.
assumptions
It
about
wasn't
domestic
long
violence.
before she became a mother,
26-year-old
embracing
India
the challenges
Kinamore
of
lived the kind of
parenthood
life
with the
that
same
revolved entirely
enthusiasm
around
she
her
brought
children.
to everything else.
In her modest
Her
home on
first
Hidden Meadows
child, a
Drive in
son,
Colerain
was
Township,
born when
every
she was
decision
just
she
20
made
years
centered on
old.
providing the best
India
possible
poured
future for her
everything
3
she had
kids.
into raising
Those who
him,
knew India best
cherishing
described
every
her as the
moment of
type
their
of mother
bond.
who would go without
She
so
was
the
a
children
loving
could have
mother,
what they needed.
dedicated to
Her
providing
daily
him with the
routine
best
was methodical
possible
and
future.
purposeful.
By the time she
Mornings
was
started
26,
early with getting her children
India
ready
was
for school,
preparing for the
making sure
birth
they
of her
had everything
second
they
child.
needed for the day ahead.
She had come a long way
India
from her
worked
carefree
steadily to support
childhood
her
days,
family, but her true
commitment
passion was
to family
evident every
never
evening
wavered.
when she returned home.
Her son, now 6
She'd
years
help with
old,
homework,
was her
prepare
world.
dinner, and
And
spend
as she
quality time
prepared
with
to
each
welcome a
child
new
individually.
baby boy into their
Neighbors often
lives,
saw her outside
India's
with her
heart
kids,
was full of
teaching
love
them to
and
ride
hope.
bikes or pushing
She
them on
shared her
swings she'd set
excitement
up in
with
their
the
small
world,
backyard.
posting pictures of
India
her growing
wasn't just
belly
surviving
and the
as a
joy
single
she
mother,
felt about
she was
becoming a
thriving.
mother again.
She had
India's
dreams that
life was a
extended far
testament
beyond
to
her current
love,
circumstances.
resilience, and the joy of
She
motherhood.
talked frequently about
She
buying
embraced
a bigger
her
house
role
someday,
as a mother
maybe one with a proper
wholeheartedly,
playroom for the
showing her
children.
children what it meant
She
to
wanted
love
to go back to
fiercely.
school herself,
But as much
to
as
build
she
a
shared
career
her
that would
life
give
with
her
the
family
world,
even more
there were
stability.
things that India never
But
saw
more than
coming,
anything, she
things
wanted
that
to
would
expand
shatter
her
the
family.
picture-perfect
The thought of
family
having
image
another
she had
baby filled
worked
her
so
with
hard
genuine
to create.
excitement, and she
She
often
had
mentioned
found
to
love
friends
with
how much she
Kayvon
loved
Warren,
being
a
pregnant and
man she thought
experiencing
would
those
be by
special
her
moments
side
of connection
forever.
with her unborn
They
child.
shared a home, a life,
When
and a
India
child on
discovered
the
she was
way.
carrying her
On
fourth
the
child,
outside,
her
they looked
reaction
like the
was pure
perfect
joy.
couple.
This
Kayvon was
pregnancy
there for her
represented
throughout the
everything she'd hoped
pregnancy,
for, another
sharing in
chance
her
to
excitement
experience
for
the
the new
miracle of
baby.
bringing life into the
But
world,
as the days
another little
passed and
person to
India's
love
due date
unconditionally.
neared,
From the moment
Kayvon's
she found
actions
out,
began to
she threw
change.
herself into
What
preparing
was
with the same
supposed to be the
dedication she
happiest
applied to
time in their
everything in her
lives
life.
slowly began to
India
unravel.
never missed a medical
What
appointment.
India couldn't know, what
She
no
kept
one could
every
have
ultrasound
predicted,
photo,
was that the
showing them
man she
proudly to
trusted,
anyone who would
the
look.
man who was supposed to
Her
protect
doctor
her,
had scheduled her
was
induction for
secretly
March 4th,
harboring a dangerous
2023,
plan.
and she had that
Kayvon,
date circled
unable
on her
to face
calendar in
fatherhood
bright red
again,
ink.
grew
She
increasingly
counted down the
resentful.
days like a child waiting
Instead
for
of
Christmas,
talking to India
frequently
about
telling
his
people
feelings,
exactly
he
how many
chose a
days
path of
remained until she'd
destruction.
meet her baby.
He made a
The
choice that would
preparation
forever
process
change the
became an
course of
obsession
their
in the
lives,
best possible
a
way.
choice that
India
would steal
spent hours
India's
researching
future
baby
and take
names,
the life
reading
of her
parenting
unborn
books,
son.
and setting up the nursery.
India had no idea that
She
the
carefully
person
washed
closest
every
to
piece
her,
of baby
the
clothing,
man she thought would
organized
be
the
by
tiny
her
socks
side
by
through
color,
everything,
and arranged
was
the crib
already
with
plotting
meticulous
her
attention
death.
to detail.
Behind the
Her
smiles,
mother,
the shared
Kinamore,
excitement about their
often found
baby,
India sitting in the
Kayvon
nursery,
had already
hands
made up his
resting on her
mind.
growing belly,
And what
talking
should have been a
softly to her
day
unborn
filled with
son
joy
about all
and
the adventures adventures they'd
anticipation
have
was
together.
about to become the day
During her
everything
final
would
weeks
end.
of pregnancy,
India and Kayvon's relationship at first glance seemed like any other. They shared maternity photos, talked about their future with their unborn son, and appeared to be building a life together. On social media, their posts showed a couple deeply in love, capturing intimate moments, smiles, and the joy of preparing for a new life. But what India didn't know was that beneath this seemingly perfect surface, things were far from perfect. And it wasn't long before the cracks in their relationship started to show. Kayvon had always seemed supportive and caring in front of others. He was there for the baby showers, the ultrasound appointments, and the shared excitement about their growing family. But behind closed doors, things were very different. According to those close to the couple, Kayvon was not thrilled about becoming a father again. He didn't want another child, and as the pregnancy progressed, his frustration began to build. But rather than communicate these feelings to India, he chose a far darker and more dangerous path. As India's due date drew near, Kayvon's behavior became more erratic. What was once a loving, hopeful relationship started to deteriorate. He became increasingly withdrawn, emotionally distant, and withdrawn from India's excitement about their baby. Rather than share his feelings, he turned inward, carrying his frustrations and resentments alone. At the same time, India was thriving in her excitement, eagerly anticipating the arrival of her baby boy, unaware of the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface. Kayvon began pressuring India to terminate the pregnancy. According to investigators, he didn't want another child, especially not with India. He made it clear to her that he wasn't ready to be a father again, that he couldn't handle the responsibilities of raising another child. But India, determined to give her child a chance at life, refused. She wasn't going to let her unborn child's life be taken from her, no matter what. This refusal would mark the beginning of the end for their relationship, and for India's life. India's refusal to terminate the pregnancy was a turning point. For Kayvon, this refusal became an unbearable weight, a source of tension between them that slowly began to eat away at the foundation of their relationship. He didn't want the baby, and India's insistence on keeping the child only seemed to fuel his anger. It was as if the love they once shared began to fade into nothingness, replaced by resentment and frustration. And the more India clung to her joy about becoming a mother again, the more Kayvon grew agitated, distant, and cold. By the time India was in the final stages of her pregnancy, Kayvon's frustration had reached a boiling point. The man who should have been her partner, her confidant, the father of their child, was now a stranger. The man who once held her hand during the early days of their pregnancy was now avoiding her, refusing to communicate, and hiding his true feelings behind a mask of indifference. How could a man go from being a loving partner to secretly plotting the murder of the woman he supposedly loved? How does someone who once shared dreams of a family end up creating a plan that would destroy that very future? Was it really just the pressure of fatherhood? Or was there something more sinister at play, something darker, something that India never saw coming? As the days leading up to the birth approached, the relationship between India and Kayvon became more strained. They stopped talking, stopped sharing their thoughts and fears. India, in her excitement about their unborn child, failed to see the warning signs. Kayvon, meanwhile, was only focused on one thing: ending the life of the child that had brought him to this point. It was no longer about communication or love, it was about control. And India's refusal to do what he wanted pushed him further down a path he never thought he would take. Kayvon Warren had a decision to make. And in his mind, the only way out was through violence. He had already made up his mind that he would not be a father again. And in the darkest part of his heart, he chose to take matters into his own hands. As India counted down the days to hold her baby boy, Kayvon was preparing to steal everything from her. He was about to make a decision that would change their lives forever. How does a man who seemed so loving, so excited about their future together, turn into a cold-blooded killer? And what would make him choose death over fatherhood? These are the questions we'll attempt to answer in the coming scenes as we dive deeper into the twisted mind of a man who would betray the woman he loved in the most unimaginable way. But before we continue, ask yourself, what happens when love turns to resentment? And when does a moment of weakness become a tragic decision? March 4, 2023. A day that should have been filled with joy, India Kinamore's due date. It should have been a day of celebration, the birth of her second child. But instead, it became the day her life was cruelly cut short. Hours before she was meant to welcome her son into the world, India's life was taken in a calculated, cold-blooded act that would devastate everyone who knew her. Behind the smiles and the excitement surrounding India's baby shower, Kayvon Warren had already set his deadly plan into motion. He wasn't excited about the arrival of his son. He wasn't anxious, nor was he preparing to support his partner. No. Instead, Kayvon was carefully orchestrating a plan to murder India and their unborn child. He enlisted the help of two accomplices, Robert Irvin and Lamar Morris Suggs, each playing a role in the execution of this horrific plot. Investigators later uncovered chilling details that revealed just how carefully this murder was planned. Phone records showed a series of texts exchanged between the three men, messages that, in hindsight, painted a clear picture of the cold calculation behind India's death. They discussed the timing, the method, and even the logistics of the murder in unnerving detail. The plot was set. The time had come to act. Kayvon's role in this plot was pivotal. He wasn't just an unwilling bystander. He was the mastermind behind it all. He reportedly left the back door of the apartment unlocked, ensuring that his co-conspirators could slip in undetected. The same man who was supposed to be India's partner, her protector, was the one who facilitated her murder. How could someone who should have been standing by her side as she prepared to give birth to their child, play such a role in orchestrating her death? On the morning of March 4th, Kayvon attended the baby shower, posting images of the ultrasound, smiling with India's family and comforting them, all while secretly ensuring that his girlfriend would never give birth to their child. It's the kind of behavior that feels unfathomable. How could a man be so calculating, so cold, while pretending to be the loving partner everyone believed him to be? Imagine for a moment the weight of the situation. India, eagerly awaiting the birth of her son, is surrounded by family and friends. They celebrate her, they lift her spirits, and they encourage her in her final days of pregnancy. But through it all, Kayvon, her supposed partner, was quietly plotting to end it all. To end her life, to destroy the future they should have had, and to take away the child she loved before he even had a chance to live. The horror of the situation wasn't just the murder itself, it was the cold, calculated way it unfolded. Kayvon wasn't acting on a moment of rage. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a deliberate, planned act. Each step taken with intention. Each move made to ensure that India would never see the birth of her son. The cruelty of it all was in the preparation, the planning, and the calm with which it was carried out. And then, the final piece of the plan fell into place. The back door of their apartment was left unlocked, allowing Lamar Morris Suggs and Robert Irvin to enter unnoticed. The murder was set to take place just hours before India's scheduled induction. While she lay in bed, oblivious to the threat, her world was about to be shattered by the very people she trusted most. Kayvon's betrayal didn't stop with the planning. It continued with his actions after the murder. He pretended to grieve, posting pictures of India, their son, and ultrasound images and crying out in sorrow. He manipulated those around him, played the part of the devastated boyfriend, and used his social media platform to feign heartbreak. The man who had orchestrated the murder now sought sympathy from everyone who had no idea about the truth behind his cold, heartless actions. But as much as Kayvon tried to play the role of the grieving partner, the truth would eventually come out. The carefully constructed mask of sorrow would crumble under the weight of the evidence. Kayvon's betrayal was too deep, his actions too deliberate to escape the truth. What he thought was an act of escaping fatherhood was, in reality, a decision that would destroy everything he once had: his family, his reputation, and his future. How does someone go from playing the role of a loving father to masterminding the brutal murder of their partner and child? What drives a man to commit such an unforgivable act, one that will forever haunt those left behind? And what does it say about the man who could fake grief so convincingly while hiding the truth of his actions? Stay tuned, because the darkest parts of this story are only beginning to unfold. 2 years passed before the long road to justice finally began to take shape. 4 months, India's family lived in limbo, unsure if they would ever find answers. But the persistence of investigators, driven by the overwhelming need for truth, began to reveal pieces of the puzzle that had been hidden in plain sight. What started as a seemingly perfect crime, an act carried out in secrecy, was slowly being chipped away piece by piece. The breakthrough came through the digital footprints that were left behind, a trail most people never realize they leave. Investigators painstakingly traced phone calls, texts, and locations, weaving together a timeline that linked Kayvon, Robert Irvin, and Lamar Morris Suggs to the crime. In a world where our every move is tracked digitally, the conspirators unknowingly left a trail. The phones they carried, the texts they sent, and the locations they visited, all painted a damning picture. The digital evidence became the key that unlocked the truth. At the heart of this digital trail were phone records, records that placed the 3 men at the scene of the crime in the early hours of the morning. These phone calls, often seen as just part of daily life, became the linchpin of the investigation. The very thing that had seemed so innocuous, Kayvon's phone and the phones of his accomplices, were now the tools that would unravel their conspiracy and expose the horrific truth. The conspiracy was exposed, and with it came the slow, painful journey toward justice. The men who thought they had outsmarted the system were now in the sights of the law. They had hidden their involvement in the murder for over 2 years, but the evidence was irrefutable. For Kayvon, Robert, and Lamar, their world was about to come crashing down. On August 21, 2025, after 2 years of painstaking investigation, the truth finally came to light. Kayvon Warren, Robert Irvin, and Lamar Morris Suggs were arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder each, one for India and one for her unborn child. The families who had been waiting for justice finally got their moment, though it came at a high price. For India's family, the news brought a mixture of emotions: relief, anger, and disbelief. They had lived in uncertainty, hoping for justice but unsure if it would ever come. Now, after 2 years of mourning and questions, they finally had an answer. Kayvon, the man who had faked grief, pretending to be devastated by India's death, now faced the full consequences of his betrayal. Kayvon, who had spent months attending India's funeral, posting tributes online, and convincing everyone around him that he was the victim, was now exposed for the monster he truly was. But the real question remained: how did he feel when faced with the truth? Would he ever truly comprehend the depth of his actions? How could someone go from being a loving partner to a cold-blooded killer? For India's family, the arrest was not the end of their pain. They had waited so long for justice, and now, 2 years later, they were left to pick up the pieces. The loss of India and her unborn son could never be undone, but the arrest of the 3 men responsible brought them a small measure of closure. For Kayvon, however, the true weight of his actions was just beginning to set in. How do you come to terms with destroying the life of the woman you claim to love? Justice may have been served in a legal sense, but the emotional cost was far greater. India's family could now begin the difficult journey of healing, but the scars left by this betrayal would last a lifetime. The man who should have been her partner was now the one responsible for taking everything away. Kayvon Warren, Robert Irvin, and Lamar Morris Suggs may have been arrested, but the pain of their actions would echo through their lives forever. The truth always finds its way to the surface. For Kayvon, Robert, and Lamar, the consequences of their actions were now set in motion. But for India's family, the road to healing was only just beginning. The investigation might have uncovered the truth, but there were still many questions left unanswered. How did Kayvon keep up his facade for so long? And what drove him to commit such a horrific act against the woman he once claimed to love? As we reflect on India Kinamore's life, her tragic death serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of manipulation, control, and deceit in relationships. India was a loving mother, devoted to her children and her family. She was taken from us far too soon, and the loss of her unborn son, who was scheduled to be born that very day, is a reminder of the sanctity of life, the promise of a future never fulfilled. India's family fought for justice, never giving up on finding the truth, no matter how long it took. They held on to hope through their grief, and now justice is on its way. But this case isn't just about the pain of losing India and her unborn son. It's also a reminder of how important it is to recognize the signs of manipulation and control in relationships before it's too late. India's story, as painful as it is, serves as a warning. Never ignore the red flags in relationships. Trust your instincts and never let anyone manipulate or control you. If you or someone you love is in a relationship where control or manipulation is present, know that there is help available. You don't have to face it alone. Reach out. There are resources, people who care, and ways to escape. Your life matters and your safety matters. India's family kept fighting for the truth, and now, after 2 long years, they have some measure of justice. But the emotional scars of this betrayal will last forever. If you've learned something from this case, share it with someone you love. You might just save a life. If this story has moved you, please share this video with your friends and family. You never know who might need to hear it, and sharing could make a difference. Let's make sure that India's story serves as a warning, a lesson for others. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to subscribe to City Crime Tales, and turn on the bell notification so you never miss a new story. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the truth is more painful than we imagine, but it is always worth uncovering.